CIA spy? Yes. Do we spy against our foreign adversaries? Yes. Do we spy against domestic individuals? No, we do not. We work very closely with the FBI.
From Zero Hedge here, Tyler Durden, from Thursday, 6/13/2019. The DOJ investigating CIA role in Russiagate. The Department of Justice will interview senior CIA personnel as part of a sweeping investigation into the origins of Russiagate, according to the New York Times, citing an anonymous source briefed on the matter. The interview plans are the latest sign the Justice Department will take a critical look at the CIA's work on Russia's election interference. Investigators want to talk with at least one senior counterintelligence official and a senior CIA analyst, both officials involved in the agency's work on the understanding of the Russian campaign to sabotage the election in 2016. Now, the Times notes that while the DOJ probe is not a criminal inquiry, CIA employees are nervous, according to the former officials, while senior agency officials have questioned why the CIA's analytical work should be within the purview of John H. Durham, the U.S. Attorney for Connecticut, appointed by none other than Attorney General William Barr to oversee their whole review. Justice Department officials have given only broad clues about the review, but did note that it is focused on the period leading up to the 2016 vote. Mr. Barr has been interested in how the CIA drew its conclusions about Russia's election sabotage, particularly the judgment that Mr. Putin ordered the operatives to help Mr. Trump by discrediting his opponent, Hillary Clinton. Now, this is according to the current and former American officials. Simply put, Mr. Barr just wants to know more about the CIA sources who helped inform its understanding of the details of the Russian interference campaign. He also wants to better understand the intelligence that flowered from the CIA over to the FBI in the summer of 2016. This comes out of the New York Times article. And why should the CIA be nervous? Fox News commentator Monica Crawley laid it out in an April op-ed in the Washington Times, seen here. I'll read a little bit of this article here. The best defense, the saying goes, is a good offense. Now, the key orchestrators of the big Trump-Russia collusion lie seem to have hewed tightly to the tactical advice. Over the past 2 years, one of the biggest tells has been their hyper-aggressive and gratuitous attacks on the president. Given that the special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation found no collusion or obstruction of justice, their constant broadsides now look, in retrospect, like a calculated preemptive strikes to deflect attention and culpability away from themselves, basically project everything they've done onto him. Now, by accusing Mr. Trump of what they themselves were guilty of, they created a masterful distraction through projection. We now know that former FBI Director James Comey and his deputy, Andrew McCabe, are hip deep in their conspiracy. Both wrote supposed tell-all books and carpet-bombed the media with interviews in which they regularly flung criminal accusations against the president. Whenever asked about their own roles, they reverted to denouncing Mr. Trump. With Mueller's findings, Mr. Comey and Mr. McCabe's media benders look increasingly suspicious, as do their comrades in the Obama national security apparatus, including former Director of National Intelligence James Clapper and his partner in possible crime, former CIA Director John Brennan, who, apart from former President Barack Obama himself, may be the biggest player of them all. Any investigation into the origins and execution of the big lie must focus on Mr. Brennan, whose job as nation's chief spook would have prohibited him by law from engaging in any domestic political spy games. Of course, the law didn't stop him from illegally spying on Senate Intelligence Committee members by hacking into its computers and lying repeatedly about it, prompting Democratic senators to call for his resignation.
Senators fired back, accusing the CIA of spying on the committee's investigators. An allegation CIA Director John Brennan flatly denied.
As far as the allegations of CIA hacking into Senate computers, nothing could be further from the truth. I mean, we wouldn't do that. I mean, that's just beyond the scope of reason.
CIA Director John Brennan apologized today after an internal investigation determined the agency had spied on staff members of the United States Senate, something Brennan had long denied.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Director Brennan, first of all, congratulations. I appreciated the chance to talk about a number of issues with you previously, and I'm going to be asking you some additional questions about drones and targeted killings in the days ahead, but for today, my congratulations. Director Clapper, I want to ask you about what I asked you about a year ago, and that was the matter of surveillance, and particularly what the rules are that an intelligence agency would have to follow in order to electronically track the movements and locations of an American inside the United States. And I asked you about this a year ago, and you said that your lawyers were studying this, and I hope that since a year has passed, we can get some answers to these questions. So first, let me ask the question, if an intelligence agency wants to electronically track the movements and whereabouts of an American inside the United States, how much evidence do they need?
Well, first of all, let me just say, sir, that particularly in the case of NSA and CIA, there are strictures against tracking American citizens in the United States for foreign intelligence purposes, and that's what those agencies are set up to do. I think, though, when I might ask Director Mueller to speak to this, because what you're referring to is, I think, devolves into the law enforcement criminal area. So, Bob.
Well, let me, and I do want to hear from Director Mueller, but I'm trying to get some general principles out with respect to intelligence, and you've cited certainly some areas that are relevant, but what I'm really trying to do is get an unclassified answer to a question about what the law authorizes.
The law is, of course, as you know, is embedded in the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, which was recently, the amendment, and to which was recently extended for 5 years. And it places very strict strictures on the intelligence community's tracking of U.S. persons where there is a terrorism nexus. And that is overseen very strictly by both the FISA court as well as within the executive branch, both by my office and the Attorney General. So there are very strict rules about that, as you know, as we've discussed.
The Obama Department of Justice and the FBI targeting of the two low-level Trump aides, George Papadopoulos and Carter Page, was carried out in the spring of 2016 because they wanted to spy on the Trump campaign but needed a way in. They enlisted an American academic and the shadowy FBI informant named Stephen Halper to repeatedly sidle up with both Mr. Papadopoulos and Mr. Page. But complementing his work for the FBI, Mr. Halper had a side gig as an intelligence operative with long-standing ties to the CIA and British intelligence MI6. Another foreign professor, Joseph Misfud, who played an important early part in targeting of Papadopoulos, also had an abiding ties to the CIA, MI6, and the British Foreign Secretary. A third operative, Australian diplomat Alexander Downer, targeted Mr. Papadopoulos in London, in a London bar. It was Mr. Downer's tip to the FBI that provided the justification for the start of the Russia counterintelligence investigation, complete with fraudulently obtained FISA warrants to spy on the Trump campaign. All of these interactions reek of entrapment. Mr. Papadopoulos now says, "I believe the Australian and the UK intelligence were involved in the active operation to target Trump and his associates. Like Mr. Halper and Mr. Musford and Mr. Downer, they all had ties to the CIA, MI6, and surprise, are you sitting down for this one? The Clinton crime family, of course." Now, given the deep intelligence backgrounds of these kind of folks, it's difficult to believe that the former DOJ/FBI officials such as Peter Strzok and even James Comey and or Andrew McCabe on their own devised the plan to deploy them. It should also be noted that Papadopoulos has suggested Stefan Halper's fake assistant, Azura Turk, is CIA, not FBI, as widely reported, and that what happened to him was clearly a CIA operation. Let's listen here into this little video clip I got of this from earlier today on the 13th of June 2019.
Papadopoulos, former Trump campaign advisor and author of Deep State Target, How I Got Caught in the Crosshairs of the Plot to Bring Down President Trump. Thank you very much for being here tonight, George. Good to have you with us.
Thanks for having me, Martha.
Thank you for being here. I want to dig in a little bit to the story that you talked to Maria Bartiromo about earlier today, but I want to first play this for you. This is John Brennan reacting to the news that now there is a new investigation by a U.S. attorney in Connecticut, Mr. Durham. Listen to this.
Does CIA spy? Yes. Do we spy against our foreign adversaries? Yes. Do we spy against domestic individuals? No, we do not. We work very closely with the FBI.
What's your reaction when you hear that, George?
Well, I think the operation that was targeted against me in London by Professor Stefan Halper and this Azra Turk was clearly a CIA operation. And that's the reason why I was flown to London to be spied on, and why the British were also meeting with me and probing me the same exact day that these two figures were paying me and spying on me and recording my conversation. So when I hear John Brennan say this, I believe, yeah, usually the CIA doesn't spy domestically, and that's why they brought me to London to meet Stefan Halper and this informant, while the British were also involved in it. So I have to highly disagree with John Brennan, and I think the CIA is up to their neck in this.
Really? I mean, it's fascinating. And, I look at you and I think about all of the interviews that we've done over the course of this and how much skepticism so many people placed on your story.
Interestingly, this should be noted that Haspel was the CIA station's chief in London during the Russiagate investigation, where the majority of the espionage against Trump's campaign aides took place. The Justice Department has not submitted formal written requests to talk to the CIA officers, but law enforcement officials have told intelligence officials that Mr. Durham will seek the interviews. Two of the people said that the communication officers for both the CIA and the Justice Department declined to comment. The Senate Intelligence Committee has previously interviewed several of the CIA officers the Justice Department is seeking to talk to as well. According to a person familiar with this whole matter, the committee found no problems with their work or the origins of the Russia inquiry. This again comes out of the New York Times article. One of the CIA officers Durham wants to question works at the agency's Counterintelligence Mission Center, one potential conduit between the CIA and the FBI, through which the agencies might have passed the information during the Trump-Russia investigation. Another senior analyst Durham wants to talk to was involved in the CIA's assessment of Russian interference in the 2016 election. Just to be clear, the CIA focuses on foreign intelligence and is not supposed to investigate Americans. Instead, the agency is required to pass domestic issues which arise during an investigation to the FBI. Again, I'm Michael. This is a Patriot Hour. God bless and Godspeed to each and every one of you. Where we go one, we go all. Remember, no deals, only pain.